Hi, I'm Dr. Hackie Reitman. Welcome to another episode of Exploring Different Brains. Today, we're very excited to have Dr. Cholet Josue from the Washington, D.C. area. Down there, Washington, D.C., Maryland. This guy is a psychiatrist, a neuroscientist, a physician. He's everything. He's going to tell you all about it. Cholet, please introduce yourself more properly.
Hi, Dr. Aki. Hi, everyone. I am Cholet Josue. I am a physician. I practice medicine in the Washington D.C. area, and I'm glad to be here so I can share my knowledge with everyone.
Well, thank you so much for coming. You've had such an exciting life, and I want you to know I'm up to page 70 of this exciting book, 12 Unending Summers, a memoir of an immigrant child, Cholet Josue. And I got to tell you, you've been to the prom. You did it. You
It
came
was
over here in a boat. Now, you're of Haitian extraction, but you were born in the Bahamas. Is that correct?
yes, my parents, they migrated to the Bahamas, and I was born there. Then they took me to Haiti when I was 4 years old.
And then you ended up on a boat coming over to the United States.
Yeah, those parents, they decide what to do with you until you're an adult. So one day they just told me to pack up and leave everything, and you have to do what you told.
How did you gravitate toward neuroscience?
Interestingly, I when I got to Florida, of course I was depressed, living on my friends. I started asking myself, why why couldn't I live in my society, given that I knew potentially we all equally smart. So when I went to medical school, I said, I need to know something about human behavior. I concluded that it had to do with human behavior. So it was between neurosurgery and something in neuroscience. I love cutting, I love surgery, but I was more interested in finding answers for myself. Why do human beings, why do we behave certain ways? So that's how I went into psychiatry and neurosciences. And
Well, you had, and your book tells the story, but tell our audience, you know, the journey, how you got from the Bahamas to Haiti to the United States.
well, my parents, as I mentioned, they're originally from Haiti. And in the 1960s, Haitians were going to the Bahamas to find work, and they had us there. But knowing they needed a community to raise their children, they took us to Haiti, which have been the greatest gift of my life because I grew up in a very wholesome village. Then the country started becoming destabilized with political turmoil. Although I was young, I was a kid, I just wanted to be with my friends. The adults knew that we had no future in Haiti. And my mom had already been in Miami, and I was the boy. I was supposed to go, and I was destined to be somewhere outside Haiti. If it weren't for the Bahamas, it would be in the U.S. So one day, my uncle, with whom I was living when my mom left, decided when to ship me out.
So, how old were you when you got in the boat?
I was 16. I was just turning 16. Um, yeah, I had never been. Actually, we live. My city is like a few yards from the ocean. I had never been on the ocean before, so it was an adventure. But I trusted, you know, my parents, my uncle. So yeah.
Now, as a board member of the Boys and Girls Club of Broward County, I'm very proud that the Boys and Girls Club played a big part for you.
Well, yeah, like we saying in what we know about the human brain, neurosciences, we all need three things to live a good life: good health, food, water, and shelter. But one of the most important is community. A community to support you. And so when I got here, a new country, new culture, I actually was crying for the next first 6 months. And I had my cousin then who lived a few blocks away from the Boys and Girls Club. So the Boys Club basically became my instant community. Actually, although I did not know a word of English. And the greatest thing about the Boys and Girls Club, the kids didn't treat me any different from them. And so, that was my savior from. I didn't want to stay at my mom's house because there was no one I knew there. So I hang out with my cousins. His house is next to almost a few blocks from the DeStephanus Boys and Girls Club. So it was my home away from home.
Now, I want to read an excerpt from your book here, which struck me, and I'd like you to comment on it.
Okay.
In 12 Unending Summers on page 71, chapter 9, quote, I'm just reading here, resilience, perseverance, optimism, self-control, and a sense of shared values in a collective community all are indispensable in building a foundation of emotional stability for a child to move forward into adulthood. Expound upon that if you could.
So here's what we know about the human brain. When we're born, the act of being birthed into the world, being born into the world, is actually a very tragic, scary stuff. As children, the world is very scary. And so we need the comfort of the environment of the people around us. So a little child who goes somewhere and knock his or her head against the wall, they're going to run to the people that comfort them, that give them food and water and shelter. So nature has it that way. The world is new and scary. So if you comfort it against obstacles in the world, and the people where you grow up, they reinforce it, that builds resilience. That teaches you the world is not totally bad. So growing up in Haiti, we didn't have the luxury of a first world. But what kids need is a community, people to make you believe in yourself. And I was fortunate by the time I was 11, I knew I could rule the world. My parents taught me to respect people, to be kind, but also to believe that it's not only about you. Then once you know that, and you growing up and you didn't know you were going to overcome obstacles, but what the early nurturing gives you, that the world's not totally bad, that there are good people. There are bad things that happen, but that nurturing that's ingrained in your brain early makes you believe in people in the world.
Well, now we'll fast forward to now. Tell us about your practice.
So let me tell you my practice. I went into medicine to heal people. I came to Maryland at Shepherd Pratt to do a fellowship in neuropsychiatry. And I was fortunate to meet my mentor who told me one day, he changed my life. One day he told me, he's from Greece. He told me that your doctor should be a priest, a healer, and a teacher. From that day on, my life was changed. My goal is to help people, to heal people. So I am a scientist. I have a BS in chemistry. I totally believe in science, but I believe in healing the human body's mind, body, and spirit. So I'm moving towards integrative medicine, meaning that use food as medicine to make sure that, and use modern medicine also to help people to live the better life. So when I meet people in my practice, I tell them about how to maintain physical brain health, because the brain is the only thing we have.
You're on a roll. Let's keep going about the human brain.
Okay. The human brain is the only thing that we have to absorb the world, the universe. So when I mentioned that we need three things to live a good life: food, water, and shelter, financial stability, good health, because if you and I are in pain here, we wouldn't be able to listen to each other, and a nurturing community. Those three resources, the only organ in our body that houses them is the human brain. Now, how do we get the tools that we need to get them the right way? We have five senses: sight, hearing, touch, taste, smell. Those are the information, those are by which we receive information to get the information into our head so we can get the resources. So it's paramount that we learn to maintain the physical health of the brain.
Let's talk about, I want to focus, as we do here at differentbrains.org, we focus on tools that are helpful and do good. Now, you know a lot about the diet that's good for the brain, anti-inflammatory, healthy kind of diet. Let's start with the diet and nutrition, and you might want to start by talking about your interpretation of the gut-brain connection.
Okay, so we know that they've been doing research. We know that we have normal bacteria flora in our gut that literally affects the blood in our gut. It travels everywhere. So the bacteria in our gut, good or bad, it affects our sense of mental wellness. So true that we have treated patients who have anxiety with probiotics by replacing the bacteria in their gut with good bacteria that we have created in probiotics. Probiotics basically it's replacing good bacteria which we create in the lab to replace the flora of bacteria that are not healthy in our gut. The reason there are a lot of receptors in our gut, in fact, serotonin, most of the receptors, a good number of the receptors in our body is in our gut. So we know there's a link. So if there's a link, then now we have to talk about the what's the connection between the brain and the gut, and to know what bacteria affects them, and to treat them both equally, because in fact, it is known that most of our illnesses uh, are originated from the gut. So that we're now creating, having a lot of experiments. We know that there are strong correlation between diseases of the brain and the gut. For the other thing I'll tell you is that our mouth, we have just discovered that flossing is one of the most important things we can do to maintain the health of the brain, because the bacteria between our teeth, they're now thinking that it may be causing cognitive decline, including dementia. So those are the link that we're now establishing between the brain and the gut. But what we know now is that a lot of disease processes have inflammatory process. So then we are now telling patients to have include in their diet anti-inflammatory uh, uh, ingredients. So those are the link between the brain and the gut.
What are some of the foods that are best for anti-inflammatory?
Okay, I did a research following some of the best researchers. Most powerful anti-inflammatory are turmeric, garlic, ginger, actually all the good spices. But surprisingly, red bell pepper has the highest concentration of vitamin C. Vitamin C is also a very powerful anti-inflammatory ingredient. And so all the spices, but we now know that turmeric has a lot of powerful anti-inflammatory active ingredients. Clove too. Clove is actually one of the most powerful anti-inflammatory uh, ingredients. So a lot of the spices have anti-inflammatory ability. So
now, in addition to good diet, what are the other tools you use for your own brain?
Well, so I was thinking last night, we have five senses to have input. So what I do, say our eye, our sight, it's good to keep our sight active with the brain. For instance, I sometimes drive and I take time to look at the flight path of an airplane. It's really to keep because the all those senses are very linked to certain specific part of our brain. So I use sight. Sometimes I take time to see the 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 color of the moon. Take time to see things that normally we don't have time in our busy fast lane
Well,
life.
that's kind of a segue into mindfulness.
Yes, but it's also creating connections. One of the so what I do also is music. I play piano and some guitar. What I do specifically with the brain sometimes, so I would be listening to music, reggae for instance. I would take the bass and follow it from the beginning to the end. And I would do three instruments. I'll do four instruments. That way I'm keeping the parts of my brain that's listening to complex music active. Smells. That we know now that one of the first signs of cognitive decline, dementia, is loss of smell. Uh, I I'm getting more into uh, essential oils because we know that the more we stimulate our part of the brain for smell, it's also linked to memory. And so, um, touch. Uh, One of the things I do, I've been doing dancing, social dancing. Dancing is known as the most complete exercise for the brain because it has a cognitive part, it has a social part, it actually has also um, cognitive, social. It also keeps exercise. So that's the one of the most complete exercise we can do for the brain. So I try to, and also what I'm doing now, I'm starting to learn new things that I didn't learn before. Chess, I have some chess. I'm gonna start learning them, even solo or with people. So the goal is to try to learn new things. And one of the other important things is to talk to people who are critical thinkers, who don't think like us, hopefully think about good things, because it forces us to, to create new circuitry in the brain. So it's really about learning new things that create new, new like parallel circuitry in the brain that keeps not only our brain active, sharp, but also that prevent cognitive decline. We know those things work.
That's great. That's very helpful. Um, are there any topics we haven't covered so far today that you would like to cover in regard to the brain?
Okay, one of the topics we haven't covered is talking about how to maintain brain health, sharpness. So I'm actually writing a workbook. One of my next phase in my professional life is to talk about the three most important tools that we need to live a good life. Self-compassion, which tells us to show care and concerns for ourselves, to accept our imperfections. That's also a very important brain tools to lower our stress because we know that chronic stress and anxiety affects us physically, cardiovascular, it increases inflammation, and the more stressed we are, it acts on our uh, cognitive ability. So self-compassion to practice self-compassion to accept ourselves because when we do that, we we're more at ease with ourselves. We're more comfortable. We don't compete with other people, so it reduces our stress. The other one is emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence teaches us to learn to speak to other people in a way for all of us to gain both individually and collectively. So speaking to people is one of the most important way of maintaining our brain sharpness. And the third thing is critical thinking. Active critical thinking is a very important brain exercise to make sure that you are looking at things in multiple ways, that you know you're aware of your cognitive biases, things that I actually believe in subconsciously, I fight against. So those three tools actually, if we talk about brain health, we have to include them because they influence our health, they influence our financial stability, and they very much influence who we have around us.
Excellent summation. Well, how do our viewers and listeners, how do they learn more about you? What's the best way? What's your website?
So my website is Dr. Josue, drjosue.com. That's my personal website. I am on Facebook. I am on Twitter. And I will be blogging with you guys, Different Brains. But if you're interested in seeing the blogs I'm blogging, I've been blogging for the past 11 months. A lot of them are about brain science. Check my website and also my Facebook, my Twitter page. I'm on Instagram also. And the other thing I'm interested in doing, talking about healing. One of the things I want to do as far as being a physician and a healer is start becoming a storyteller to go out and speak about self-compassion, emotional intelligence, and critical thinking in a storytelling way, but with my drums in a way to have conversation with people in a healing way. So I'll be look out for me in a place nearby. I'm looking forward to coming down to South Florida. I'm in the DMV, the Washington District area. So that's the way you can contact me.
That's great. So the website and this book, 12 Unending Summers. Excellent. And it's Memoir of an Immigrant Child by Cholet Josue, MD. It's been a pleasure to talk with you today. And we look forward to having you back. You keep up the good work because, as you say, the brain is where it's all happening. That's where it's happening.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I definitely look forward to coming back to South Florida as soon as possible.
Exploring Different Brains is a production of Different Brains, Inc. For more information, visit us at differentbrains.org.